So in this lesson, we're going to finally change this no name to something that's an actual name. And the special part about this is we're going to cover the next way to interact with a database. So there are 4 main ways you can interact with a database: create, read, update, and delete. It spells out CRUD. So if you ever see that somewhere, that's what it refers to. Now, if we go to our provider, we actually do create and read already. So create is when we're adding data to our database during a sign-up. We do a read whenever we retrieve that data. We do it in the sign-up using the get. And then up here, we also are reading through a query. So there are 2 other ways to interact with the database: update and delete. Now in this case, since we're going to be changing the user's name, it's going to be an update method. So we're going to call this function update name. And we're going to need to pass in the new name. The way we do that is on Firestore, we go to our collection. We're going to go to our users collection. And we're going to find a specific document in that collection. So the whole reason we added ID, remember, our local user has the actual Firebase user and has ID. That's why we added it, because using this ID, we can actually find that specific document for this user. So all we do is state ID, and that's where our document is, and we call an update function. And we put our new data, whatever we want to update here. I want to show you this just to be thorough. If we wanted to delete, all we do is just call delete on this document, and this document would go away. But we don't want to delete it here. We want to update. And the data we want to update is the name. And we just update it to that new name. So that's how you would update the name in our Cloud Firestore. Instead of having new name here, now we have something different. But we also need to update our local user state. So again, we do this by setting a whole new state. And this time we're going to do state.copyWith. We do a copy with because we want to make sure the ID is the same. All we want to do is just change the name. So we want to copy this Firebase user and the ID. And in this case, we're going to use the copy with function again because we want to make sure it's the same ID. We just want to change the username of this local user. We want to keep the same exact ID. But in order to change the name, we need to actually change the whole user property, so the whole Firebase user. And we get that by doing state.user. And then now finally we copy with the name field with the new name. So this is copying the other user information. It copies the email, it copies the profile pic, and we only change the name here. Okay, so that's how we set up the state to update the name and how we update in our Firestore document. Now the key part is we need a way to update all of this, as we just did like the whole logic behind it. There's no actual way to interact with it. We're going to do that in our settings page. What we're going to do in the settings page is set up a column, and we're going to add a text form field just like we did during our login time, except this time we're going to just be changing that name. So we're going to add a text form field. And remember, these need a controller, something that actually gives you access to that text. And to have a controller or something that interacts with the data on our screen, we actually need a stateful widget. And we're going to go ahead and actually change this into a consumer stateful widget right away, because we will need to get that reference to be able to update our username. Okay, so there's a text form field. Like I said, we need a text editing controller. I'll call it name controller. I'm going to set that controller to this form field. And we're going to actually give it a default value whenever we get to the settings screen. That default value is going to be our current name of the user. So we can do that by watching our local user. and then setting nameController.text to be current user.user.name. And there we go. So we have our default value no name in there. And this page doesn't really tell us what to do here. It just says no name. So we want to add a little decoration called input decoration. I'm going to add a labeled text that says enter your name. All right, so in here, we'll be able to edit it. And now I need some way to actually submit this to update it. So we add a little text button down here maybe. Whenever we press it, we have that function set up on our user provider. Where we have update name, we can take our name controller, take the text out of there with a new name, and update that name there. And for the child, add a little text that says update. Okay, so it brings us back to this no name because we didn't have a chance to update our state with the new name. And let me quickly add a little bit of padding here just so it looks a little bit better. And we can add our new name. We say Tadas Petra. Update. Perfect. If we go back now, it should be updated here. And it is. And if we go in here, it's updated everywhere. And if we go check our database, it's updated here. So that's the power of state management. We updated it in one single place. Our whole app is updated. We have our name everywhere. It's consistent. Everything works how we want to. The next part is actually adding a way to update your profile picture. So we don't have to have this default guy here anymore. And I'll do that in the next lesson.